Now, welcome to another weekend ramble.
Woo!
First one in a while. We haven't done one of these in a bit.
Not exactly, no.
I mean, I ramble pretty much every video, so I guess it's kind
This is
of
just on the weekend.
yeah. This is just the weekend special ramble. But
Woohoo.
today, final hopes and fears for Andor, which at the time of recording this comes out in a couple days.
Oh
Wednesday.
my goodness, so close. So
I know.
Close. Final hopes and fears.
Final hopes and fears.
I feel like I'm way more hopeful for this than I was for Book of Boba Fett.
I am more hopeful for this than I was. I shouldn't say that. I actually thought Book of Boba Fett was going to be pretty good, just considering kind of the people involved. And I thought, well, how can you screw up Boba Fett, right? Just as long as he's kind of a badass and he goes around and does cool things. Like, of all the shows that really didn't need like the strongest plot ever, I would say Boba Fett was it. It could have been I got out of that Sarlacc pit and now I'm gonna go kick some butt. I mean, if that had been the whole premise of the show, I think most fans are gonna be like, okay, yeah, that's fine, that's good, I like it.
Well, I think part of the reason I'm really hopeful for Andor is because Rogue One was well liked, it was well loved. You could feel that there was depth to the characters, and he's the one who wrote this.
Yeah, well,
They're his characters who
Yeah.
he probably already had some backstories in his mind. He's fleshing out things that he probably already thought of and has had the time to work on this. I mean, they've been working on this first season for a long time.
Oh, this was announced years and
This
years ago.
isn't
At this
a rush
point. Yeah.
job, you know?
No, the opposite of that. It's almost taken so long that you really wondered, is it ever actually going to happen? I mean, kind of infamous Star Wars is these days for not completing projects that they say they're going to. So
The fact that they didn't do a bunch of heavy volume work, that they built practical sets and things are there. The orchestra was even present on sets playing the music while they were
is
doing
so
some acting.
strange,
I'm
yeah.
like, how can the actors not get fully into it, fully vested in these characters when literally everything is real? It's all right there. You can hear what we're going to hear later. It's amazing.
yeah, I mean, like I said, very hopeful. More hopeful than I was for. In the back of my mind, I thought Kenobi was going to be so kind of. I mean, I did have hope for it, but there was that fear, like, well, it's going to be a generic story, isn't it? They're going to do something that's just going to be, nostalgia, member berries, and that's kind of what it turned out to be. With this, you're right. It's something, it does come from Rogue One, which I think is probably the most liked Star Wars movie kind of universally
For the Disney
from Disney,
era,
yes,
yeah.
from Disney, obviously, but. And it's got that same vibe, it's got that same look, it's got that same
And these
feel.
aren't legacy characters that they can really mess up.
Not really. I mean, you got the Mon Mothma, but I wouldn't call
Right.
her like a quote unquote legacy
Big,
character.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're delving into characters that we know. They're expanding on characters. He sounds like he paid attention. I mean, Cassian spouted off the 6 years old, I've been in this fight line.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're actually going to make that true. They're not going to like circumvent. I mean, like, no,
Yeah.
it was just a phrase. It was a turn of phrase.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my
That is your notification, yes. We get
I
told
don't love
daily.
Star Wars or anything.
No, we get told multiple times per day those are not the droids we're looking for.
Well,
Your
usually
phone
the
is
message
always-
isn't something I'm looking for either.
Exactly why that is your notification tone.
Yes. I have so much hope. All of the actors have been really selling it for me in a way that beyond, what they did for...
Well, I think that we could move into a fear. I think it's kind of a general fear of, and it's something, a lot of shows these days have this, going into it, the actors talk about it. It's going to represent this. It's a reflection of the modern world. And we have heard that. We've had, I can't remember which one said it, but, that this is going to be a reflection of Trump's America and all these things.
Oh,
And
the
we've-
one who's playing Cassian's adopted mother.
Yes, and we've also heard from the female ISB officer that it's going to kind of be, it's going to show, the patriarchy of the empire, which...
Right, that she's kind of hates men.
Yeah.
The position she's in, she's had to fight for
not so much
everything
that-
because
yeah.
she's a woman.
She has to fight harder. And I hope and think that this is a lot coming from the actor's perspective, not necessarily like this is what the show is meant to represent. And I mean, if you start to kind of watch, especially when it comes to the ISB officer, just a little bit of footage we've seen, she seems very like serious, like, oh, there's this rebellion and nobody's taking it seriously. I have to believe that it's going to be more along the lines of they're not taking her seriously because she's saying the rebellion is a genuine threat when they don't feel it is. Not so much that they don't believe her because she's a woman.
That
as
it might
much as
just
it's
be her using her own motivation as to what
Yes.
she perceives her part to be.
Yes.
Which is what I hope for too. I hope that it's not like, oh, the Empire hate women. Well, then why why'd they let her get such a high position?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if it does, like, they are the bad guys, right? Like, so if they hate women, is that, like, and I'm not trying to defend the decision because obviously the Empire is kind of xenophobic, right? They don't like alien species for the most part.
Absolutely.
You can look at Thrawn's story, kind of shows that really well. And so, I mean, I've never thought of them as being, even though you could look at the original trilogy, like, there are no women in the Empire. It was kind of this really interesting thing that Disney did, that they started to put women and, you know, people of color and all these things into the Empire that weren't there before. It used to just be like, you know, white British men. And so it was kind of an interesting decision, considering.
And if you look at the Rebels, the only women there were Mon Mothma and Leia.
Yeah, but they're leaders. Well, there were a couple others, like, sprinkled here in the background, but there's one in The Empire Strikes Back. The name eludes me. She's in the command center on Hoth. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting decision because you could have just gone with the narrative, like, you know, that, oh, it's white men are the evils in the galaxy, right? Which is a narrative.
Hey, we don't know how many of those stormtroopers were ladies.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something that's been added in the Disney era, which, you know, like I said, you can give them credit, you can say it's strange, you can, whatever, you know, opinion you want on that. So when it comes to this, I truly think it's going to be not so much like, oh, it's the Empire is this, you know, big patriarchy and misogynistic thing, as much as they just don't take her seriously because she's pitching that the Empire are a threat, or the rebellion is a threat to the Empire.
She's saying that they're actually in danger.
Yeah.
When how could they believe they're in danger? They're building a super weapon.
Yeah.
They're completely in control of cities, towns, everything. They're about to take the Senate apart. You know, they're thinking about it in a few years.
Yeah, in a few years. And I mean, it gels with what we've heard out of Cassian from the trailers and stuff. Oh, you just walk right in and take it. They're so full of themselves. They're so...
Yes.
So I think that's what it's going to be. Now, if she used the motivation, it's because she's a woman, then... and it works in the show, then so be it. I don't know. I get tired of, like, you know, it always has to be like, this real world motivation for everything. No, it's Star Wars. Can we just let Star Wars have its own... you know, internal strifes and conflicts that, you know, the people of that galaxy go through, which doesn't mean they can't reflect at all, and that there can't be politics in Star Wars. Clearly there are politics in Star Wars, but we don't always have to, like, it doesn't always have to be a message about the real world. We get enough about the real world in our day-to-day lives, I think.
I'm curious what kind of cameos we might possibly see in this show.
You mean what kind of characters? Like...
Yeah.
Or you mean like cameos from actors?
No. Character cameos. I'm curious because he said that only ones that are going to be in there aren't really fan service because they're things that really make sense. Yeah. So I'm curious who we might see.
Could be a lot of things, honestly.
I mean, we could see. We know we're going to see Bail. I think he was in one of the trailers.
That's almost certain. Yeah.
Could we possibly see Leia? She was working in the Young Senate.
Yeah, this would be 5 years post Kenobi, for whatever that's worth. So
she'd be
about 14 in this time period. Yeah.
Well, 15. I think she was like 10.
Well,
9 or 10.
She was 9 in Kenobi. She would be.
Okay.
This
so
would be 5 years before.
So she would definitely be in the Junior Senate program at this time.
Yeah.
And for all we know, you know, so we could pass her in a hallway or who knows what not. I'm curious who else we could possibly see.
So as I said before, I think the Ghost Crew is a strong possibility, or at least like a Hera or Ahsoka is not an impossibility either. Absolutely. I mean, she makes sense in this time period. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's probably a couple others that are, you know. I mean, we'll probably see Palpatine, right? He alluded to the fact that, oh, there's something that I'm working... Well, that could have been Kenobi, too, because he does pop up in there. But I'm not going to be stunned when we get Ian McDiarmid as Palpatine in this somewhere.
I feel that that's almost a definite.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many characters that have a possibility of showing up that you could make sense with, that it's rough, because I don't want to just spout out names.
No.
Like... What are the fact we won't? I don't think we're seeing any Han Solo in this. He's working in the underground. He's not working for the rebellion.
No, he's his own smuggler right now. He's not going to be. Mm-hmm. Even though Solo kind of implies he helps with the rebellion, it's just.
I'm very curious if we could see a young Jyn Erso. 5 years ago, I don't think Saw had separated from her yet. So maybe when Luthen or whatever goes to visit. We could see a Jyn in the background or something preparing for a mission because she'd be there. And then she, of course, if Luthen's there, I mean, that means Andor, Cassian, he won't come in to contact her, but we as the audience would be like, oh my gosh, it's Jyn. Because she was a part of Saw Gerrera's group.
Yeah, Rebel Rising. That's
Yep, that was the book
Yep.
Was the book. It gives you the exact details of how Saul left her. He
Which
was
gets
rough.
said in the book.
Pretty much
yeah.
left for dead.
Yeah, which she says you abandoned me in the movie she talks about, so makes sense. That
yeah.
all that actually holds up. You know?
So I think it'd be kind of cool, have a young Jyn Erso cameo.
Sure, I'm fine with
I
cameo.
mean, all he has to do is, Luthen comes up and he's like, "No, Jyn, put that over there or something," and you see someone in the background moving something.
I'm absolutely fine with cameos that make sense and don't feel forced. Like Rogue One did a great job with that. Other than Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan, that was the dumbest cameo I've ever seen in anything ever. I mean, is it funny? Sure, but did you need it? Absolutely not. But I mean, Gold Leader, Red Leader, Battle of Scarif. I mean, and then Red 5 getting killed at the Battle of Scarif. Like that's good. That makes sense, right? So that kind of stuff, yeah, I'm all for that kind of quote unquote fan service because it's not necessarily in there for the fans as much as it is in there because it makes sense for the story.
Do you have any interesting theories going into this?
I mean, it's hard to have a theory because we kind
know
of
so
know
little,
what's. I mean,
but
we
we know what's
do and we
coming.
don't know what's going to happen, right? So it's hard to theorize because it's like, well, what's my theory that eventually they're going to steal the Death Star plans and die? I mean,
Well, that is a solid theory.
that's my guess. Is I think someday, like 5 years later, Andor is going to steal the Death Star plans along with Jyn, who we were talking about, and they're both going to die.
Sorry, it was a leading question because I have a theory.
Oh, let's hear it.
All right, my theory: you most likely won't get validation until possibly season 2.
Okay.
Okay, my theory. Okay, so we know the droid, B2 Emo, is
I know your
Cassian
theory. You've told me it
Andor's
before, yeah.
family droid.
Yeah.
What if something terrible happens and he kind of gets destroyed, protecting him, or destroyed by the Empire for reasons?
Yeah.
And when Cassian reprograms the K2 droid, what if he inserts the personality of B2 Emo into it?
I could see that.
Which now would no longer speak in astromech because it would speak through the unit's vocal programs.
Vocal processor, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah. It would
a very
nullify
slight
the
possibility.
K2SO Cassian comic book, which
They're
they
already
actually mentioned that. I was surprised. Like Tony Gilroy actually mentioned that at one point that he knew of its existence, which is at least something. I mean, is it a great story?
I think he said that it was going to be different.
Yeah, I mean, was it a great story? Am I going to be sad to see it go? No, but it's again one of those things where it's like, I'm so glad I read that because you just completely, when it becomes inconvenient, you undo it.
I mean, I personally like my theory, but at the same time, I also don't think it would happen.
No, I think
because
you could be right.
Because I think K2 says things about how...
Yeah, he kind of seems like he remembers being an
Imperial droid.
Right, yeah, so... But it could be something along those lines.
I think it'd be a fun little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it could be the last act that his emo droid does that kind of overrides K2 or something before he blows up. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a transition between the two or, kind of...
I think that'd be kind of neat.
Yeah.
It would make K2 even a deeper character in his own right. Yeah. I am sad that we're not going to see him in season 1.
Yeah.
Unless there's some surprise little thing at the end that they're throwing in there just because they're like, surprise everyone, look, it's K2!
Yeah, which I wouldn't be stunned when the season ends with them finding like a security droid and they have to use it and they take it with them and, oh, look, there's K2, yeah. Mm-hmm. Some kind of teaser for the next season that he'll be there. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'm very optimistic. I know I shouldn't be. I know the last two... I know.
You know better.
You would. I mean, you would think I'd be negative and pessimistic and thinking this is going to be terrible, but I think this has the potential to be really good. And I don't, unfortunately, I think both Boba Fett and Kenobi did a lot of damage to the fan base. I think there's a lot of people really disappointed with those shows, and I'm definitely one of them because again, those are legacy characters that you kind of, as I've said before, it's just the stories were generic. They were just kind of like, there was nothing.
Kenobi felt shoehorned.
Kenobi felt very shoehorned. And like I said, Boba Fett could have been a generic story, but it needed to be a cool generic story. And they just kind of went with this, he changed.
They made his character very odd.
Yeah.
I respect you. Nobody knows you're alive. And as he's telling everybody, my Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, buddy.
And I mean, when it comes to Andor, I don't think if this is bad, it's going to do much in the way of damage. Because I think a lot of people are just already it's going to be what it is. And one way or another, I think Mandalorian next year, early next year, is going to, it's going to get a lot of attention no matter how good or bad Andor is.
We don't know.
Well, I'm assuming it'll
Originally,
still be...
we all said February. February. The trailer came out, just said the year.
Yeah, I know. We talked about that.
Yeah.
And then we have Bad Batch confirmed in January, which I think, the animated crowd is going to watch that no matter what. Mm-hmm. that Andor is not going to ruin that. No, so I mean, all around, I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. I am. And if I'm wrong, like I always say, like if it turns out I was wrong and it's bad, I'm certainly going to say as much. And if it turns out it's fantastic, yeah, I'll be praising it. Hopefully for the next month and a half, 2 months, whatever it's around for.
However long it takes.
Yeah. I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. I mean, that applies to me, too. I've been a Star Wars fan since I was actually 5 years old. Return of the Jedi in the theater when I was 5 years old. Wow, you just had to
outdo Cassian?
I had to outdo him by a year. I've been in this fight since I was 5 years old, Cassian. I got you by a year, buddy. I've been fighting for Star Wars and fighting against it sometimes, too, in the name of it being better. In the name of Disney trying to...
In the name of the Death Star, I'll punish you.
Yes, there's your Sailor Moon reference. But no, I mean, closing thoughts, I think it's going to be good. I do.
Good. I really think it's going to be good.
Yeah.
I'm all hope. Rebellions are built on hope.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say it.
This show is built on hope.
This show is built on hope. And let's hope it's good. Mm-hmm. Well, that's all we got for you this time. So take to the comments below and tell us, what are your hopes and fears for Andor? Do you think this is going to be good? Do you think it's going to be not so good? Whatever the case may be, you know what to do. Leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.